Stop satisfying because what just happened in Cleveland changes everything. The quarterback controversy everyone talked about for weeks was never real. It was smoke. It was noise. It was a lie fed to you by lazy analysts and planted narratives. And 5 minutes ago, the truth finally exploded into the open. Dillon Gabriel is gone, not benched, not demoted. Gone, traded away like yesterday's garbage while the entire football world watched in shock. Andrew Berry didn't make a subtle move here. He didn't send a quiet message or open some fake competition. He grabbed the steering wheel and yanked it hard in one direction. Shedeur Sanders now controls this franchise. The same quarterback everyone laughed at. The same name that fell for 4 rounds while 31 teams looked the other way. The same prospect scouts whispered was uncoachable, arrogant, and too flashy for his own good. He's not a backup anymore. He's not a project collecting dust on the practice squad. He's the guy. And the spin doctors are already working overtime. Gabriel's camp is flooding the timeline with excuses. They want you distracted. They want you blaming Cleveland. But the truth is sitting right there in the trade details if you're paying attention. To understand why this moment hits so hard, you need to travel back to where the disrespect began. April 26, 2025, draft night, the biggest stage in football. This was supposed to be Shedeur Sanders' coronation. Mock drafts had him climbing into the top 10. Analysts called him the most polished passer in the class. He had the arm, he had the accuracy, he had the bloodline, son of a legend, trained by a Hall of Famer since birth. Every scout in the league knew his name. Every front office had studied his tape. And when the clock started ticking, everyone expected fireworks. But something strange happened instead. The first round came and went. No Sanders. Name after name flew off the board. Quarterbacks with weaker arms and smaller resumes heard their names called. Teams grabbed linebackers, they grabbed safeties. They grabbed defensive linemen nobody outside of draft Twitter had ever heard of. And still, Shedeur Sanders sat in the green room, waiting, watching, feeling the doubt spread across the building with every passing pick. The second round arrived, more silence. By now, the whispers in the building were impossible to ignore. Something was wrong. Somebody somewhere had poisoned the well. The cameras kept cutting back to his face. The analysts kept scrambling for explanations. And one by one, teams exposed themselves as cowards. Then the third round started. Cleveland was on the clock at pick 94. A desperate franchise, a falling star. It felt inevitable. It felt written. And then the gut punch landed. The Browns passed. They selected Dillon Gabriel from Oregon instead. A shorter quarterback with a weaker arm and a safer story. The kind of prospect front offices love because he doesn't bring headlines. He doesn't bring drama. He doesn't force anyone to answer hard questions. But Cleveland wasn't done twisting the knife. They came back in the 4th round. Another chance. Another opportunity to grab the quarterback sliding down the board. And they passed again. This time for a running back. Not even a premium position. Just another slap in the face while the whole world watched. By the time pick 144 finally rolled around in the 5th round, the damage was already done. Cleveland grabbed Sanders almost as an afterthought. A lottery ticket thrown into the cart after the real shopping was finished. No fanfare, no excitement, just a quiet pick that felt more like an insult than an investment. But here's what nobody talked about at the time. The fall wasn't about talent. It was never about talent. It was about whispers. Quiet. Vicious. Calculated whispers that spread through front offices like wildfire. Anonymous scouts started leaking reports to reporters they trusted. They said Sanders was difficult. They said he made executives feel small during interviews. They said he carried himself with too much confidence. They questioned his attitude instead of his accuracy. They questioned his personality instead of his production. Character concerns became the easy excuse. The shield every cowardly front office hid behind while pretending they were making smart football decisions. Nobody wanted to admit the truth. They were scared. Scared of the attention. Scared of the father. Scared of the spotlight that follows the Sanders name everywhere it goes. And while 31 teams protected themselves from a media circus they imagined in their heads, Cleveland thought they had outsmarted everyone. They thought Dillon Gabriel was the answer, the mature option, the clean narrative. They patted themselves on the back and waited for the football gods to reward their wisdom. But the football gods don't care about narratives. They care about tape. And the tape was about to expose everything Cleveland tried to hide from itself. What those scouts didn't realize is that their whispers would age like milk left in the sun. Because the quarterback they buried with rumors was about to rise from the ashes. And the prospect they crowned as the safer choice was about to collapse under the weight of his own limitations. Cleveland thought they had found their answer at pick 94. They thought Gabriel would silence the doubters and validate the process. They thought playing it safe would protect them from the chaos that follows Shedeur Sanders everywhere he goes. They were wrong. And the evidence was about to pile up week after week until ignoring it became impossible. For the first 6 weeks of the season, Dillon Gabriel looked like a front office victory lap. He said the right things in press conferences. He showed up early and stayed late. He checked every box that makes executives feel comfortable about their decisions. The Browns named him the starter without hesitation. No competition, no drama, no questions, just a clean depth chart and a simple message. This is our guy. On paper, it made sense. Gabriel wasn't some unknown project pulled from obscurity. He had historic college production, over 15,000 passing yards across multiple programs, a track record that screamed reliability. He transferred from UCF to Oregon and dominated immediately. He won games. He moved the chains. He looked like exactly the kind of quarterback a rebuilding franchise could trust, and the football world bought in completely. Analysts praised Cleveland for avoiding the circus. They applauded the maturity play. They nodded along as Gabriel delivered safe answers and kept the attention away from the quarterback room. No headlines, no debates, no daily arguments about whether the rookie should play instead. But there was a problem hiding beneath the surface. A problem that tape doesn't lie about. A problem that showed up every single Sunday no matter how hard the organization tried to spin it away. Dillon Gabriel was limited, physically, unavoidably, permanently. He stood under 6 feet tall. That's not an insult, that's a measurement. And in the NFL, measurements matter. He struggled to see over the line. He struggled to find windows in traffic. He struggled to locate receivers when the pocket got muddy and the rush closed in. His arm strength was average at best. He couldn't drive the ball into tight windows. He couldn't threaten defenses deep. He couldn't make corners respect the vertical game. And when defensive coordinators figured that out, everything collapsed. Week after week, the offense looked lifeless, predictable, stale, drives that started with promise died slow, painful deaths in the middle of the field. 3rd and long became a nightmare. Checkdowns replaced aggression. Screens replaced explosiveness. The Browns weren't losing shootouts. They were losing ugly, boring, unwatchable games that made fans wonder why they even tuned in. The numbers told a brutal story. Cleveland ranked dead last in total QBR. Not near the bottom, not in the struggling tier. Dead last. 32nd out of 32 teams. The worst offense in professional football, wearing the same uniform as a franchise, desperately trying to convince itself that everything was fine. Defenses stopped respecting Cleveland completely. Corners sat on short routes knowing Gabriel couldn't punish them deep. Safeties crept into the box knowing the run game wasn't a threat either. Linebackers jumped passing lanes with zero fear of consequences. Every opponent knew the formula. Take away the easy throws, force Gabriel to beat you with his arm, watch him fail. And he did fail, not dramatically, not spectacularly, just quietly, consistently, predictably. That's the worst kind of failure in the NFL. The kind that doesn't make headlines but slowly strangles a season to death. Gabriel wasn't throwing 5 interceptions a game. He wasn't melting down on national television. He wasn't giving the media easy clips to mock. He was just existing, managing, surviving. And in this league, surviving is the fastest way to get yourself replaced. The Browns stumbled to a 1-5 record. 6 games, 6 chances to prove the doubters wrong. 6 opportunities to show that the safe choice was the smart choice. And all Cleveland had to show for it was a bottom feeder offense and a locker room slowly losing belief. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wanted to admit at the time. Gabriel wasn't the problem because he was bad. He was the problem because he was limited. There's a difference. Bad quarterbacks make mistakes you can fix. Limited quarterbacks have ceilings you can't raise. Cleveland didn't draft a project that needed polish. They drafted a finished product that simply wasn't good enough. And every week, the gap between what Gabriel could do and what the NFL demanded became more obvious. Meanwhile, sitting on the bench, collecting reps with the scout team, running plays designed to mimic opposing offenses, was the quarterback Cleveland tried to bury. Shedeur Sanders watched it all unfold. He watched the offense struggle. He watched the protection collapse. He watched the drives die and the scoreboard stay frozen. And he waited, not patiently, not quietly, but strategically. because he knew something the front office hadn't figured out yet. The Gabriel experiment was already failing. The clock was already ticking, and sooner or later, opportunity would knock. What nobody expected was how violently that knock would arrive. Week 11 brought the Ravens to town. Baltimore, one of the most physical and terrifying defenses in professional football. A unit built to punish mistakes and destroy confidence. This wasn't a game for the faint of heart. This was a battlefield disguised as a football field. Dylan Gabriel walked into that stadium knowing his grip on the starting job was slipping. The whispers had already started inside the building. Coaches were losing patience. Teammates were losing faith. The offense had shown nothing through 6 weeks except an ability to disappoint in creative new ways. But Gabriel still had the job. He still had the keys. And against Baltimore, he had one more chance to prove the doubters wrong. That chance lasted exactly one half of football. Late in the second quarter, the pocket collapsed. Purple jerseys flooded through the line like water breaking through a dam. Gabriel had nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. And before he could even process the danger, multiple defenders arrived at the same time. The hit was violent, the kind of collision that makes entire stadiums go quiet. Gabriel crumpled to the turf and stayed down. Trainers sprinted onto the field. Teammates stood frozen. The Ravens' sideline watched without emotion. They had seen this movie before. They had ended seasons with hits like that. Gabriel was diagnosed with a concussion. His day was over. His grip on the starting job was suddenly hanging by a thread he couldn't even see. And standing on the sideline, helmet in hand, was Shedeur Sanders, the fifth-round afterthought. The quarterback scouts buried with whispers. The name Cleveland passed on 3 times before reluctantly adding him to the roster. He wasn't ready for this moment, not even close. Sanders hadn't taken a single first-team rep all week. Not one. He spent every practice running scout team looks, mimicking opposing quarterbacks so the defense could prepare, learning the playbook from the outside while Gabriel commanded the show. Now he was being told to go win a game against an elite defense with zero preparation. No warm-up, no easing in, just chaos and consequences. The results were predictable. Sanders completed 4 passes. He threw 1 interception. He looked exactly like what he was, a young quarterback thrown into a fire he didn't start with no tools to put it out. The Browns lost 23-6. The offense managed nothing. The scoreboard was embarrassing. The tape was ugly. And the media smelled blood immediately. Within minutes, the narrative started flooding social media. Talking heads who hadn't watched a single snap of Sanders' college career suddenly became experts on his limitations. They pointed at the box score like it told the whole story. They said this is why he fell. They said this is why teams passed. They said Cleveland was smart to keep him on the bench. The hot takes wrote themselves. Failed experiment. Overhyped prospect. Another cautionary tale about drafting quarterbacks based on name recognition instead of actual ability. It looked like the end before it ever really began. It looked like Sanders would fade back into obscurity. A footnote in Cleveland's long history of quarterback disasters. Just another name on a list nobody wants to be part of. But something happened inside that disaster that the cameras didn't capture. Something that the box score couldn't measure. Something that only the coaches standing on the sideline could see. Shedeur Sanders didn't flinch. He didn't panic when the pressure came. He didn't fold when the throws didn't connect. He didn't shrink when the scoreboard turned ugly and the crowd turned hostile. He kept pushing. He kept attacking. He kept believing. Kevin Stefanski watched a rookie quarterback get thrown into an impossible situation and respond with something rare. Poise, composure, fight. The stats said failure. The tape said something different. The tape said this kid belongs here even when everything is stacked against him. And that's when the conversation inside the building started to shift. Not loudly. Not publicly. But in the quiet rooms where decisions get made and futures get determined. Maybe the Gabriel experiment was over. Maybe the 5th-round pick deserved a real chance. Maybe the scouts who buried Sanders with whispers were about to be exposed in the most embarrassing way possible. Cleveland had a decision to make. Stick with the safe choice and watch the season bleed out slowly. Or trust the kid nobody believed in and see what happens. What came next shocked everyone who thought they already knew how this story would end. Kevin Stefanski did something most NFL coaches are terrified to do. He trusted his eyes instead of his job security. He looked at the Baltimore tape. He looked at the Gabriel tape. He looked at 6 weeks of evidence piling up and made the call that changed everything. Shedeur Sanders would start against the Las Vegas Raiders. No easing in. No co-starter nonsense. No qualifiers or safety nets attached to the announcement, just a simple message delivered to the entire locker room. This is your team now, go prove everyone wrong. The football world reacted exactly how you'd expect. Analysts questioned the decision. Former players doubted the timing. Social media erupted with predictions of disaster. Everyone remembered the Baltimore game. Everyone remembered the 4 completions and the interception and the lifeless offense that couldn't move the ball. Nobody remembered that Sanders had 0 preparation that day. Nobody mentioned the scout team reps. Nobody acknowledged that he was asked to run a game plan designed for someone else against one of the best defenses in football. Context doesn't trend on Twitter. Box scores do. But Stefanski didn't care about Twitter. He cared about winning. And from the moment Sanders took the field against Vegas, something felt different. The first drive was clean. Rhythm throws. Quick decisions. Confident footwork. The offense actually moved. Chains actually moved. Points actually appeared on the scoreboard. This wasn't the panicked, overwhelmed rookie who stumbled through Baltimore. This was someone who belonged. Then came the throw that silenced every doubter in the building. Sanders dropped back. The pocket held just long enough. He saw the window and pulled the trigger. 66 yards in the air. A perfect spiral that landed exactly where it needed to land. Touchdown. The kind of throw that makes defensive coordinators lose sleep. The kind of throw that separates NFL starters from NFL backups. The kind of throw Dillon Gabriel physically could not make even with a clean pocket and all day to throw. That single play told the entire story. This wasn't about experience or maturity or playing it safe. This was about ability. Raw, undeniable, elite ability. Sanders didn't stop there. He navigated the pocket like a veteran. He extended plays when the rush arrived. He manipulated defenders with his eyes. He delivered strikes into tight windows. He finished drives. He commanded the huddle. The Browns won 24-10. And just like that, history was made. Shedeur Sanders became the first Cleveland Browns rookie quarterback to win his debut start since the 1999 season. Think about that. Decades of quarterback disasters. Decades of failed experiments and wasted picks and rebuilding projects that never rebuilt anything. And a 5th-round pick accomplishes something none of them could. The locker room felt it immediately. Veterans who had seen everything suddenly looked energized. Receivers who spent weeks running routes nobody could hit started believing again. The energy shifted. The culture shifted. The entire building woke up. And the outside world had no choice but to adjust. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about why Sanders fell. It was about why teams let him fall. Suddenly, the scouts who leaked those character concerns looked foolish. Suddenly, the Browns looked smart for taking the gamble even if they took it way too late. But Sanders wasn't done proving points. The Vegas game was just the appetizer. Week 14 brought the Tennessee Titans to Cleveland. Another chance, another stage, another opportunity to show the world that the resurrection was real and permanent. And this time, Sanders didn't just win. He dominated. 364 passing yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, 1 rushing touchdown, complete and total command of the offense from the opening snap to the final whistle. He joined Joe Burrow as the only rookie quarterback in NFL history to post those exact numbers in a single game. The Browns lost 31-29 in heartbreaking fashion, but the scoreboard didn't matter anymore. The tape mattered. The growth mattered. The evidence mattered. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't adrenaline. This was a franchise quarterback announcing his arrival, and inside the locker room, the message was even louder. Jerry Jeudy praised the chemistry publicly. Veterans who rarely speak up started defending the rookie to reporters. The building unified around a single truth. Shedeur Sanders was the answer, whether Cleveland wanted to admit it or not. But even resurrection comes with risk. Because while Sanders was busy rewriting history, the front office was staring at a decision that could undo everything. December 9th arrived with a question nobody wanted to answer. Dillon Gabriel passed the concussion protocol. He was medically cleared, healthy, ready to reclaim the job that still technically belonged to him. In the NFL, there's an unwritten rule everyone understands. Starters don't lose their positions to injury. You go down, you recover, you come back. The job stays yours. That's how loyalty works. That's how organizations protect their investments. That's how quarterbacks maintain their leverage. Kevin Stefanski looked at that unwritten rule and ripped it apart. He announced that Shedeur Sanders would remain the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. No competition, no rotation, no carefully worded statements leaving the door open for Gabriel to return. Just a cold, ruthless declaration. You're not good enough anymore. Think about how brutal that message really is. Gabriel didn't lose his job because of some catastrophic failure. He didn't throw 6 interceptions in a must-win game. He didn't curse out a coach or quit on his teammates. He got hurt. He followed the protocol. He did everything right, and Cleveland said none of it mattered. The 3rd-round pick. The safe choice. The quarterback the organization trusted over the kid they passed on 3 times. All of that investment reduced to bench duty with no path back to relevance. Gabriel handled it publicly with grace. He said the right things. He supported the team. He acted like a professional even as his career in Cleveland crumbled in slow motion. But behind the scenes, the damage was already done. His camp knew the writing was on the wall. His agent knew the phone calls weren't coming. Every team watching understood that Cleveland had made its choice and there was no walking it back. Then the final blow landed. Gabriel was traded. Not released with a chance to pick his destination. Traded, shipped out like an asset that no longer served a purpose. Cleveland didn't even try to pretend there was a future. They cleared the roster. They cleared the controversy. They handed the keys to Sanders and dared the rest of the league to question them. The message echoed through every front office in football. Cleveland moved on after 6 starts. 6 games, that's all the patience they had. That's all the runway Gabriel got before the organization decided his ceiling wasn't high enough. And here's the part that makes it even more devastating. They were right. Gabriel was never the problem because he was lazy or unprepared. He was the problem because he was limited. Under 6 feet tall, average arm strength, unable to threaten defenses vertically. Those limitations don't disappear with more reps or better coaching. They're permanent. Cleveland realized they had drafted a finished product that simply wasn't finished enough. And once Sanders showed what real arm talent looked like, the comparison became impossible to ignore. The front office had to choose between loyalty and logic. They chose logic. But here's what nobody is talking about. Cutting Gabriel loose didn't make Sanders safe. It just made the expectations heavier. Every loss now lands on his shoulders. Every bad throw gets magnified. Every struggle becomes evidence for the people still waiting for him to fail. He went from afterthought to franchise savior in a matter of weeks. That transition sounds glamorous until you realize what comes with it. The pressure, the scrutiny, the impossible standard that comes with being the chosen one. Cleveland didn't just name a starter. They bet the entire rebuild on a 5th-round pick who still hasn't played a full season. That's either the smartest gamble in franchise history or the setup for another disaster. And the threat isn't sitting on the bench anymore. The threat is sitting in the draft room. Critics love pointing at numbers. They love clean narratives. And right now, the cleanest criticism of Shedeur Sanders is his completion percentage. 52%. That's the number that gets thrown around on television shows and Twitter arguments. That's the number skeptics use to claim he's not ready for this moment. But that number is a lie, not factually, statistically, contextually, because context changes everything. And nobody talking about Sanders' completion percentage wants to talk about the context surrounding it. Start with the offensive line. Cleveland's protection isn't bad. It's historically terrible. Sanders faces pressure on nearly 50% of his dropbacks. That's not a typo. 50%. The 2nd worst rate in the entire NFL. Only Justin Herbert operates in a worse environment. Every other snap, defenders are in his face. Every other snap, the pocket collapses before routes develop. Every other snap, Sanders has to make something out of nothing while Giants try to separate his helmet from his shoulders. And he's still producing. He's still throwing for over 300 yards. He's still making throws that win football games. He's still elevating an offense that has no business being competitive. Now look at the run game. Cleveland ranks 30th in rushing. Defenses don't respect the ground attack. They don't have to. They know the Browns can't run consistently. They know play action doesn't scare anyone. So they pin their ears back and attack the quarterback every single play. Sanders isn't operating in some neutral environment where good decisions lead to good outcomes. He's operating in chaos. Constant, unrelenting, exhausting chaos. And here's the part that should matter most. The throws he's making despite that chaos are ridiculous. He's fitting balls into windows that shouldn't exist. He's delivering strikes while taking hits. He's extending plays and finding receivers downfield when the 1st and 2nd options disappear. He's doing things Dillon Gabriel couldn't do from a clean pocket with 5 seconds to throw. That's not potential. That's production. That's elevation. That's a quarterback dragging a roster forward through sheer force of will. Compare that to what Cleveland watched for 6 weeks under Gabriel. Safe checkdowns that went nowhere. Third down conversions that never came. Drives that started with promise and died in field goal range. An offense that couldn't scare anyone deep because the arm strength wasn't there. Sanders has limitations right now. His timing isn't always perfect. His decision-making isn't always clean. He's a rookie learning the hardest position in professional sports while getting hit nearly every snap. But his ceiling is nowhere close to Gabriel's ceiling. And ceilings matter in the NFL. Organizations don't invest in floors. They invest in upside. They bet on growth. They chase the version of a player that doesn't exist yet but could exist with time and development. Gabriel's development was finished. He is what he is. A smart, limited quarterback who can manage games but can't elevate rosters. Cleveland watched that truth play out over 6 weeks and decided they couldn't pretend anymore. Sanders is unfinished, raw in some areas, brilliant in others, capable of throws that flip entire games, capable of growth that hasn't even started yet. That's the difference that matters. That's the difference Cleveland finally admitted when they traded Gabriel away and committed to the future. But admitting the truth doesn't eliminate the danger. Because the same front office that finally chose Sanders is still holding ammunition that could destroy him. Here's where the story takes its darkest turn. While Shedeur Sanders fights for survival every Sunday, the Cleveland Browns are sitting on a ticking time bomb. 2 first-round picks in the 2026 draft. 1 of those picks is currently projected to land inside the top 5. That's not just draft capital. That's temptation dressed in leverage. Top 5 territory is where franchises find their golden boys. The clean prospects. The guys scouts fall in love with during private workouts and conference room interviews. The names that make front offices feel safe about their futures. Names like Jalen Milroe. Names like Quinn Ewers. Names that will dominate draft coverage for the next 12 months. Names that will be sold as saviors to every struggling franchise in the league. And history tells us something uncomfortable. When teams have access to that kind of pick, they almost always convince themselves to use it. That's the nightmare scenario nobody wants to say out loud. Sanders plays his heart out over the next 4 games. He keeps this offense alive. He shows growth. He shows grit. He commands the locker room. He keeps Cleveland competitive when the roster has no business being competitive. And then the season ends. The cameras shut off. The noise fades. The front office retreats into draft meetings with scouts and analysts and decision-makers who see things differently than fans see them. That's where the danger lives. Because staring at a top 5 pick changes people. Suddenly patience feels risky. Suddenly development feels slow. Suddenly the 5th-round quarterback becomes a great story instead of a long-term plan. Suddenly the shiny new prospect with the clean resume looks safer than the guy who fought through a broken roster. Cleveland could use those picks to build a super team around Sanders. They could fix the offensive line. They could add weapons. They could finally protect the quarterback who's already proving he belongs, or they could reset the clock. Draft a brand new face. Start the cycle all over again. Bury Sanders on the depth chart and pretend this season never happened. That's how this league works. That's how front offices operate. That's how careers get erased before they ever really begin. Sanders isn't just playing against defenses right now. He's playing against math. He's playing against draft boards. He's playing against the fear inside an organization that has been burned too many times to fully trust what it sees. The next 30 days are about more than wins and losses. They're about evidence. Every snap Sanders takes is testimony. Every throw is proof. Every hit he absorbs and gets up from is a reminder that this job might already be promised to someone else. He's not auditioning for opponents. He's auditioning for his own front office. And Cleveland has a choice to make. Will they finally do the smart thing and build around the talent they stumbled into by accident? Will they trust what the tape is screaming instead of what the draft hype whispers? Will they break the cycle of overthinking and resetting every 2 years? Or will they do the Browns thing? Will they convince themselves that potential beats proof? That tomorrow is always better than today. That the answer has to come from the top of the draft instead of the quarterback already fighting for them every single Sunday. The pressure is unimaginable. The stakes are franchise-defining. And the clock is ticking louder every single week. Everything Shedeur Sanders does now carries weight. Every throw, every decision, every moment of leadership. Every time he gets up after taking a hit from a defense that knows Cleveland can't protect him. This isn't just a stretch run. This is a public audition for a job that might not be his even if he earns it. The Browns need evidence. They need proof. They need reasons to believe that the fifth-round gamble is worth protecting from the shiny temptations sitting in the draft. And Sanders is the only one who can give it to them. He's walking a tightrope with no net below. Win games and the skeptics say the competition was weak. Lose games and the skeptics say the ceiling isn't high enough. Play it safe and the critics question his aggression. Take risks and the critics question his decision-making. There's no perfect answer. There's no outcome that silences everyone. There's only performance. Relentless, undeniable, week after week performance. And here's what makes this moment so cruel. Sanders has already outplayed every reasonable expectation. He wasn't supposed to start this year. He wasn't supposed to win his debut. He wasn't supposed to throw for 364 yards against Tennessee. He wasn't supposed to command a locker room full of veterans who have seen more disappointment than hope. He did all of it anyway, and it still might not be enough, because the NFL isn't fair. Front offices aren't logical. Draft boards don't care about what happened last week. The league is obsessed with potential, obsessed with upside, obsessed with the next thing instead of the current thing. Sanders represents something uncomfortable for Cleveland. He represents a mistake they almost made, a player they passed on 3 times, a prospect they didn't trust until circumstances forced their hand. Committing to him fully means admitting they were wrong. It means acknowledging that the Gabriel experiment was a failure. It means standing in front of cameras and saying the 5th-round pick was smarter than the 3rd-round pick. That's hard for organizations. That's hard for egos. That's hard for people whose jobs depend on looking smart in front of ownership groups and media members. The easy path is resetting. The easy path is drafting someone new. The easy path is burying this season and pretending the rebuild starts next year instead of right now. Sanders is fighting against that easy path every single Sunday. He's fighting against the gravity that pulls organizations toward shiny objects and draft night excitement. He's fighting to make ignoring him impossible, to make moving on from him embarrassing, to make betting against him the dumbest decision Cleveland has ever made. And so far, he's winning that fight. But the fight isn't over. 4 games remain, 4 chances to stack more evidence, 4 opportunities to prove that the resurrection is permanent and the future is already here. The whole league is watching. The scouts are watching. The front offices that passed on him are watching. The analysts who doubted him are watching. And somewhere in Cleveland, the people who control his fate are watching too. The clock is ticking louder every single day. Shedeur Sanders has already proven more than anyone expected. He's won games nobody thought he could win. He's made throws nobody thought he could make. He's commanded a locker room that had no reason to believe in him. But proof doesn't guarantee survival in the NFL. Not when draft picks glitter and front offices panic and organizations repeat the same mistakes they swear they've learned from. Cleveland has a decision to make. Build around the quarterback already fighting for them. Or chase the next shiny name and watch this story repeat itself for another decade. The evidence is there, the tape is there, the growth is there, the leadership is there. Now the question is whether Cleveland has the courage to trust what it sees, or whether they'll do what they've always done: reset, restart, repeat. Shedeur Sanders isn't waiting for permission anymore. He's taken the keys. He's driving the franchise forward. The only question left is whether Cleveland will let him keep driving or yank the wheel away at the last second. The whole league is watching. And this time, there won't be any excuses for getting it wrong.